Thank you so much, Jen, for coming on the podcast. We kind of go back now. I think I can say that. What have we been working together for 6 years now or something like that? Did you come on
Do
to
you feel
Prism
like
and
I feel like I'm only ever hard on you? I'm like, I need this thing. I need this thing. I want other I'm like become like I'm a real brat with tech.
No, we love you. We love you. It's funny. People think the people who think that they're hard on us are like have no idea to just how loud the voices can get. And
I
then
bet.
like oftentimes the loudest voices are kind of like, oh yeah, I'm just, we love you, but I don't know. Isn't this normal? It's like, anyway, you're great. We definitely love you,
And
Jen.
it's nice that, I mean, when I started, we were using like FileMaker Pro or something to track our offers and I think actually I've been on your team because I want you guys to be more CRM-y, just putting that into the ether. Because
I love that. I do. I want to set that. I want that too. Yeah.
I really want that. I mean, I think I just remember like as like a new buyer, how hard it was. And this is just the thing to say because we were just talking about speaking to the masses. Like I remember not knowing how to send an offer. I remember I asked like my elders, right? I was like 21 or whatever. And I asked like the men who were supposed to be mentoring me and they ignored me multiple times because I think they didn't want to share the knowledge.
Oh my.
Like literally we're all working for the same company and they wouldn't even share how to make an offer. Like, which there's like theories and ideas. And so like to go from that in my life then to like a Prism, which actually contemplates our actuals and what we're doing. And, like,
yeah, it's purpose built for doing this. Yeah.
Well, and with Prism has to be like, okay, here's like little idiosyncratic ways the industry works. And that, and like we have all these little idiosyncrasies that add up to our little extra $1,000 a show because we're like desperate to make money, right? Like the story of being a promoter in a venue is you're just hustling to try and like figure it out, right?
No, and that was one of our initial selling points too that we don't like really talk about often. It's like actually forcing yourself to put this stuff into a system and like really ironing down like what's your budget on everything. I mean, it's definitely one layer of defense is like if you're not meticulously tracking this stuff on a spreadsheet and you switch to something like Prism, like there's definitely a river of pennies that you can pick up that like lead to a real, amount of money. Yeah.
Well, and I think that
I love that we're jumping in, by the way. This is great.
Well, I was working on budgets this morning and I indoctrinate a lot of people to Prism, because I'll have clients and I'll be like, well, this is what we're using, friends. And
I love that.
And most of these clients of mine are venues or people who are like still on Google Calendar, and you're like,
when did you get on to Prism? Was it 2018 or 2019?
I don't know.
It was pre-pandemic for sure.
COVID in between all those years. It was right when you guys started, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it was probably around 2018. Yeah, it's come a long way since you first got on, huh?
Oh, yeah. I'm now using the rental function as a big part of my life these past 2 weeks. I'm really excited about it.
I love that. Well,
no, I think it's important.
Well, and we just launched Insights, and I know you're a big fan.
I am.
We haven't talked about it yet, frankly. So here live on the pod, I've heard from the team that you're
enjoying. At all. People are people talking about it or no? They don't.
No, I haven't talked with you about it. We've talked about it in the podcast, okay. Yeah. But I'm excited to talk to you specifically. So give me your spiel. You were telling me
my spiel. The call
that you're a fan of transparency. Yeah,
that's true. I believe that I mean this in a loving way. I think there's pluses and minuses to this, and in my career, I've done both, right? My company, MeanRed, started as underground promoters, super DIY, non in legal spaces, right? And then now I'm in a lot of legal spaces, but also I run a DIY venue in Detroit. So I'm always kind of riding the line a little. The dogs. And I think that our industry sometimes is too willing to go in and out of buttoned up, And so for me, the transparency piece is, I don't think it should feel like magical thinking to land a show or magical thinking for me to offer on a show. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of like, I'll often ask agents and managers, hey, can you send me history? And I'll get some response back that's like, well, don't you believe in this artist? It's like, what does that even mean? Like, yes, like when I buy a Volvo, I believe in the Volvo, but I check the VIN number. Like it's not, you know what I mean? You're asking for $20,000. Can you just?
That's astonishing. They say that to you? Well, don't you just?
Oh my God, it's so horrible.
Just trust me, bro.
Oh, It's so offensive because and then sometimes I'll say crazy things back. Well, like, do you have a spare $5,000? Do you want to go in with me on this show? Or like, we're doing this for fun now? Like, it's just, I don't. So the transparency piece, Polestar probably used to have a lot of data a long time ago and now it doesn't. And so then I'm also pulling data from Ticket Sell AI has data and you guys have data. I just want to look at it and say, okay, well, look, because I want to book the act and then I need to go to the agent or artist and say, hey, I think you guys can do around this, but I can bring an extra this amount to the table and that's why you should go with an independent promoter, right? Is we're going to like think and work and beg and plead the world to come to these shows. So the thing with insights is hopefully the transparency is like, I just hope that artists get to the place where they want to be transparent. And that's how you can buy shows and book shows. And people should say, yes, that artist only did 500 tickets last time, but Jen, he just put out a single or whatever. And we think that more can happen. And then how are you going to get there, Jen? And then it's like on me, right? Like that's my job to sell those more tickets. So I'd like to see us get to a negotiation space that is more thoughtful about the fact that we're all like that the agents and us are in the middle, right? Like there's a reality there. None of us are, not the artists, but we have to make everyone the money. So how are we going to do that in a way that like has just more transparency? And I think the other piece with transparency, as I said to you when we were kind of like thinking about stuff to chat about, like I believe a lot of the transparency issue keeps a lot of like good business out because we don't have transparency. You don't have as many women and minorities in the business because it's so high risk, right? Like it's crazy high risk, these things. Like
Oh,
it's
that's an
gambling.
interesting connection there. Yeah, I think, yeah, I could, yeah, that makes sense for sure.
I started when I started thinking about if I wanted to take on investors or not for one of my venues and had to really learn about that because I've always just funded my own everything for like better for worse. Janky as it is sometimes, perfect as it is sometimes. Like what I learned was that like people want to give money and opportunities to people who look like them, right? So maybe women with women, men with men, et cetera, onward down the line, right? Because you want to like do business with people you feel comfortable because you're nervous because it's high risk. And women tend to be less high risk with investments.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, well, how do I carve out a place in this industry that's a better fit for different kind of people's skills, different kind of curators, different kind of, and I think that so a lot with the venue I'm working on in Detroit, I've now decided it's going to be a nonprofit, and then I'm going to have a different group of curators because I want to create a different space and have different, question the gatekeeper issue, bring in other viewpoints more comfortably, So I think that, but I think I wonder, like, is anyone else sitting and thinking about this stuff? Like, are the agencies thinking about this? Are the big management companies thinking about this? Like, how do because we're all like, younger people are not super excited to be in our business. And I feel like we're hearing that across the board, right? People in their 20s and 30s are like, yuck, like, that looks really stressful.
Yeah, no kidding.
But do you maybe have more people on your side with tech? Do you have more people who are excited because you're tech?
That's interesting. I mean, I'm kind of caught up on that point there that the younger generation is not like flooding into the industry. I think
Yeah,
I'd love to see like cold hard data on that, but
me too.
I mean, it's a fascinating point. I mean, is the industry getting easier or harder? It's certainly not getting easier,
Harder,
and I think
100% harder.
for sure. And I don't think insights alone can,
Save it?
save it. But I'm
Not
glad to
gonna
be.
save us, Matt. Come on.
I know I'm glad to be playing my part to a certain extent. And if we may just sit there for a second, like that's a beautiful perspective that having a healthy level of risk taking in this industry can lead to more
Yeah.
um, diversion and diversity and inclusion. It's a really fascinating point that I hadn't really even considered, frankly. But I think I do think it is no matter how much data that you have, like if Insights was perfect and everyone reported to Insights, and we combined it with some AI kind of synthesis analysis. Like, okay, we looked at the past ticket sales data and social media data
Yeah.
and Spotify data is going. So, $8,000 guarantee is like, less risky. $10,000 guarantee could still make a
Correct.
profit. But yeah, therefore you should do the show. We'll never know for sure, right? And then even if Insights gets like extremely good at predicting how many people are going to show up, like there's weather, there's like your neighboring venue booking something extremely competitive. Like there's so many factors, and like the risk then just kind of falls on the people that are buying the show, and the artist takes on plenty of risk too with going out on tour, and without the artist, there's it's like literally the core of the whole industry. But that's what we're trying to do here is just like help make this whole thing more sustainable. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the way Prism works too, you can kind of think about tracking your success as a buyer too. Like
Yeah.
I'll like look at my numbers and I was like, oh, that year is good. Oh, that year. And then I'll look, how did I make that mistake? Oh, fuck, that's how I made that mistake. Why did I make that mistake? You know what I mean? And I'll like write
Yeah.
at the end of the year, this was my blind spots or whatever. You know what I mean?
I love that you do that. Oh, interesting.
I'm really, and I'll have like, I'm also a little like juju about it. Like there's people I make money with and there's people I always lose on. And like, I'll
Interesting.
always,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And I have to like, I literally send a list off into my booking assistant. And I'm like, if I start a conversation with that person, you best stop me because I make mistakes every time I'm around this style of music or this kind of whatever.
Yeah,
Because
and I think that's a major case that like I'm sorry I cut you off. Is
no,
that
no, you're good.
okay? I feel like that can be like a podcast can just turn into moments of like people jumping in and being caffeinated, and we could either do that or not. Either way. But on that point specifically, like I actually think there's a major case that insights like deeply benefits the agents and the artists if they
Yeah,
buy into it, because they're
yeah.
buying into this idea that transparency is good, and like they want to make money with you. And put simply, like if you don't want someone to understand the true financials, the true history, leading up to this event, and they want you to take a risk without it, well, I hate to, I'm not exactly being charitable in saying this. Well, like maybe there's a bit of a nefarious kind of perspective there,
Yeah.
and
Or
a
if
lack
that's
of
the
a,
other thing,
a
like,
zero sum game, Yeah.
like I emailed an agent recently and was like, hey, I know this artist is asking for more than they're worth. Like I was just like, said it. I was like, but if you think it'll adjust, here's, I have a group and we want to do a couple shows. Just being like, and he was really lovely and he's always really straightforward. He came back and he's like, nope, it's still too expensive. Like just being like, he knows what I'm looking for. You know what I mean? And the truth was, if I like sometimes you'll want to like offer to like you'll have a way, some magical reason to pay too much for a show or whatever. You know what I mean? But I think that you just have to be able to say that honestly. Or like if an artist, like
Yeah. Just
sometimes
be eyes
artists
wide
have
open
a number.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like I'll totally buy shows that like make no sense financially because I'm like, well, it kind of meets this other goal of mine,
Yeah.
to or push into this or that. But if you could start saying that more often, and if artists could kind of even say, hey, look, and the other piece of it is if the industry can say that to the artists, right?
Yeah.
So like another
Mhm.
piece that I think happens a lot is I see um for example in like Afrobeat when it launched in the US and in hip hop, like there isn't a lot of those shows go to Live Nation. They offer in certain ways. Those agents and managers and labels handle certain artists in certain ways. There's a lot of like problematic inconsistency across the board of how artists are communicated with and told about their careers, right? And I think because again we're unregulated as an industry, like it just kind of keeps happening, right? And like, and I and I think female artists know that all the time. They'll hear one thing and they don't get the full picture, they don't get the full what have you. So I just think that if in general, the problem is this though, like we're still not even at a point where it matters. Like if someone calls people out, like I remember when the Me Too movement happened in like Hollywood or whatever, and I was working at like a nightclub at the time, and I thought, well, how look at those ladies are so lucky. Like they can call it out, and they're still going to maybe get another job. Like that's not our industry. We can't call out people. We can't call out unfair treatment of artists or of
You're
those of us.
talking about if like a high profile agent sticks it to you, you can't like
We're
be
just
loud about
not.
it. You kind of just
We're
have to
not there
accept it.
yet. You know.
Yeah.
We're And yeah, and like little things. If you like see something happening with an artist, like I've watched artist careers that I really get upset about that. I'm like, oh, that artist should have gotten this better advice or this whatever or this support or this da 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 da.
Yeah.
There's no, you know, you can tell it like falls flat, even if the artist voice is out there. Like there's an artist I book who like recently called out her agent for dropping her. And I thought, it's so crazy because that should have gone so much farther, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
should have picked it up or people should have talked about it or we should have like all wondered, well, this artist sells 300 to 500 tickets. Why is an agent? What does that mean? Or but we're just not there yet,
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was just having this conversation, or I was just making a post about it. When I try to explain hard ticket plays to my friends that are not in the industry, they
Yeah.
just do not get it. And when they peel it back, it's like, okay, how do you make money? And like, how much are you risking every time? And
Yeah.
so, and I think, hard ticket plays are this kind of, it's like this funny paradox. Like in many ways, it's perhaps the heart and the meat or whatever, if you will, whatever analogy you want to use of the whole industry. Like it's what makes, it's like the grease of the wheels, if you will. And then there's private events and festivals and all these other kind of like, things outside of hard ticket plays. But, um, it's so hard to win on a hard ticket play that, I think, we're still in the process of introducing insights in a way where people are, cool with it, whether it's an agent or even promoters buying into it. And, I think my perspective on it is, I'm curious to hear your perspective on it, but my perspective is like, hey, like, can't we all just agree that hard ticket plays are just unbelievably hard? It's a part of the industry that, perhaps shouldn't be sustainable, but somehow is through like the hair of everyone's chin. So why don't we do something that makes it a little bit easier? And like, what was your perspective when you first heard about insights? And I wasn't in those conversations. Did you jump in right away? Was there some resistance? And like, what was the resistance and how did you get over it?
Think we had any resistance. I think I just had to think about exactly who was going to access our data. I
Yeah,
think so I already am like paying for data from another source from like the Ukraine or something who has a bunch of data. So I'm like always looking for data. And it's not that different than Polestar was. You know what I mean?
yep,
Polestar used to be, I mean, there was things when I started that we had data. We had like what we always would look for when I very first started was Polestar numbers, which had more, I think, more smaller clubs and stuff. And then also we would look for spins per market. So like we would be calling disc jockeys and saying, "Well, how many
interesting.
spins are you giving
Wow.
this track or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like we had data that now I can't access. Like now I don't get clean access to Spotify even if I have Chartmetric. I can't see every market. So like what we did used to have, we don't have. So this is just a return. Like there used to
I
be
love that.
like and it's interesting that we don't because we're not like creating like a unified industry, like we're not unified like fighting for it, and that's what I'd like to see change a little bit.
Yeah. You brought up the whole point about like who will see your data. And like that's probably the number one reason that people don't join is there's competitive concerns and there's a number of things that we kind of say back to them. I can name a few of them. Like, one of which is we bring up Polestar and it's like, hey, we understand that there's a sensitivity to your data. Insights is a platform where you don't get access to the platform unless you're sharing. So no one's looking at it that's not also contributing to the benefit of it. And number two, Polestar is out there and the agents are going to want to take the best shows and put it on Polestar so that it could benefit them. So, you don't have a choice whether your data shows up in Polestar or not. So you might as well kind of join something that you can benefit from. And I think the last point that I'll make here, and it is like a doorway into another part of the conversation, is whether independent promoters share or not, Live Nation has an abundance of data and they can make hard ticket plays work because
Exactly.
scale
I
and
think
yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
I totally think this is the problem, right? I don't think there's many other industries where a little company like mine is competing with a behemoth like Live Nation, right? Like there isn't other industries where like it's not like in the tech world you have like a person who made an app in their bedroom is competing with Google. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
they have
sometimes
to
you do,
scale up.
but I understand your point for sure. Yeah, it's David and Goliath, no doubt. Yeah,
It's
you
very
could
David and
probably
Goliath.
point to examples in other industries, but like it's a fascinating point. I mean, it's like you're
Maybe,
going
but not where we're competing for the same thing. You might be competing for like it's literally me
on like
like
one show where they can just like disproportionately offer and just buy out. Yeah, that's unique for
like
sure. Yeah.
Patronat is a great example. Like there's
Yeah.
an artist that I gave him one of his first shows in New York. I've gotten other shows with him. It's
Cool.
great. But there's no world in which I can compete with AG to get another show with him. I mean, I could go up and try to get whatever, like I mean, maybe I'll win one show, right? But like I'm directly competing with people who are gonna just innately, by the way, need me to put artists on and to grow them. And then they also, because that's kind of, we're usually the ones, independents, you know what I mean? But we're not able to stay with them. So I think it's an interesting piece. And I think in particular, I would assume that AEG and Live Nation do have a lot more ways to engage in best practice of booking shows and looking at data. And so I'm like waiting for someone from their folds to come into the independent side and say, like, if someone like Prism was able to come out and say, hey, this is insights, this is the data you receive, this is how you could use all this data, this is how you could view all of your success, this is how you can, like from a statistics standpoint, like I would like to see it get to that level of like, okay, we have this data, but then what is it? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
who's like, because the only people who are using it in the best, strongest ways are Live Nation and AG, and they have a bunch of statisticians on their payroll, right? Who are like helping figure out.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I don't have an inside look on like how much data science that they're doing every time they book a band, especially at the club level. Like, but I think the things that, from a layman's view that I can see is, well, they have scale.
Yeah.
And that means that they have more data. And I mean, even with insights, is I think like what's the more important thing for insights is that we put a level of like AI data analysis on top of insights, or what the industry is telling me is just more data is better, and
Yeah.
that's kind of guided our product effort. Like when we launched, I was anticipating like putting on like AI recommendations like pretty immediately, and frankly, we're still interested in that. Like, okay, you're looking at this artist, here's 10 other artists that are like it, and all
Yeah,
these
I
are
think that's
interesting.
smart.
Yeah, but the overwhelming ask is just more and more data, more and more data. And, Live Nation has this data set where 60,000 new events every year go into their data set. AG, whatever, 20,000 events. And then they have the last 10 years. So I don't, again, I could be completely wrong about this, but my assumption is that what's far more powerful than the Harvard kind of MBAs just, crunching the numbers and doing data science is just having the history in the first place is just so absolutely key. So that's one of the
Yeah.
things that we're, mostly focused
Yeah, just
on.
being able to
Yeah.
see it. But I think also like, for me, when Insights came out is like, I think it's how many people do you have sharing data now?
Um, we have, I think, 130 or so. Yeah. 130
And how
partners.
many
And
users do you have on Prism?
there's a couple ways to break that down. So that's about 800 venues out of those like 120 organizations that are sharing. In total, there's about 2,000 venues being booked out of Prism and 400 organizations. So we've got about a third of the user base on Insights now, and yeah,
That's
third
pretty
of the
good.
venues. Yeah.
I wonder, like, I think it'd be amazing to get all of the Prism users together and have that discussion
Yeah, I'd
about
love to
it.
have a yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
We've talked about having like a Prism conference at one point.
I
Yeah.
mean, it worked really well when they did it with Ticketfly and there was
Oh
flag
yeah.
because it was like, oh yeah, we're all making a choice to be part of this. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Uh-huh.
I think that there's a benefit for all of us to have that discussion with each other, you know?
Yeah, it's something that you said that I want to spin back to is that, by the way, that's really cool that you did run the first Kate Trinata shows. I think I caught them
Yeah.
in Austin like 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember if it was pre-pandemic or not. Definitely one of those blurred moments. But this is another thing that I'm one of the more kind of aspirational sides of Insights that I'm like curious about, or even Prism in general. But like I feel like Insights is addressing it more directly. Is eventually artists kind of grow out of independent promoters, and
Yeah.
if there's this question of like, does the top of the industry have like a monopoly or a duopoly? I actually think the bottom side of the industry, like on the club level, like provides cover for that question. Like if you take out the clubs and you just look at arenas, like there's almost an unequivocal monopoly, right? Like I don't know about monopoly, but there's like less and less and less companies that like operate at the bigger levels. And I think, I think there is some kind of, playing unfair with like just having really sharp elbows with how much money they're throwing at the tours. But then I think again, like the risk profile just goes up and up and up and up. And if you don't, it's an Ouroboros problem. Like it's a snake in a snake's tail when you don't have the data. And then,
Yeah.
but then one person has the data and their data gets better. And then the rest of the industry gets less and less data and gets further and further away from being able to book, on the amphitheater tour level. And I would love to see just more independents going into bigger rooms and doing bigger shows. And, I know there's a lot of questions about this is how it is and this is why, but part of me is like, I don't know. Why not? Why can't
Yeah.
an
I
independent
think
promoter
that
book out an arena,
I agree. And it's definitely like one of my larger goals is to, always have like a couple larger shows a year. Eventually, I think. I think in New York, we have a couple independent promoters that are really big. We have Avant Gardner and then we have Tech Support. So we have two over 5,000 cap rooms that are independent operated, which I think is pretty great. And I just think New York is pretty amazing in that, right? Like that we do have.
But two total in New York City, like just two, right? I guess
True.
glass half empty or glass half full.
That's totally true. I mean, and I think, like there's a couple promoters that are always doing bigger arena stuff. Adam Torres does, and there's a few others that kind of do, but it's not the norm. And there isn't like a clear path kind of to all that stuff
Totally.
too.
Yeah.
And I think that now, it's interesting because the AEG and Live Nation battle is like so intense in New York. So it's hard to, and so to me, I always think, okay, well, what else, what can I focus on other than that? Do you know what I mean? Like, what can I do show wise that's like not what they're looking at? Or how can I
Yeah.
support other kinds of artists that aren't? And I think like Winter Jazz Fest has done a really nice job of that. I used to do Brooklyn Electronic Music Festival and we were able to kind of be a little niche for a while. Um, I mean, I think there's like, we've been working on a lot of cannabis events and tying in culture and community. And there's just, you got to look at it totally different too, right? And then can you grow that? So it's like, can I get something now and can I grow it? And you see if that works.
Yeah. Super interesting. Yeah, that's a solid point. I totally hear what you're saying, that sometimes it's kind of like, oh, you guys can, just, go after the bigger shows and
Well,
and
because that's
and
what
raise
they're
the
like,
bar and raise the barn. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what the artist wants, right? The artist
Yeah.
doesn't want necessarily to have to like make a bunch of like, when you're with an independent, we're going to ask for a lot more for marketing, probably. We're going to want to engage a little bit more, you know what I mean? Kind of way.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's just
we're
more
going to have more
turnkey with the
opinions.
bigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting kind of side of the industry. I hear what you're saying. I do still think that there's room for
Yes.
independents to do
Well, we
more
want
around
that,
the
right? We
country. And
want that.
yeah, I mean, another thing that people just assume too is that, in the next 10 years it's just still going to be AEG and Live Nation battling it out at the top, and maybe, like nothing goes on forever, I think is a fair thing to say. And in the same kind of
Yeah.
statement, I will say, well, there's a lot of things that go on for a very, very long time, and who knows? I mean, I don't think I'm anywhere near the end of my career, but I could be at the end of my career and I wouldn't be surprised if it was completely different at the top. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same. But I don't, yeah. What's your perspective on that one? Do you think 20 years from now, we're still going to have Live Nation and AG battling it at the top?
I mean, what I hope is that what I like to see is that there's like a different way of thinking about shows and events and culture. And I think there's of course room for someone else, right? You just look at like what Burning Man does, for example, right? They like totally did it completely different than anyone else. I think that there's enough of us who are thinking differently about business. I mean, it's not necessarily my goal to like run be part of some massive company that's competing at that level because I think the artists get lost in the sauce. So I wonder,
Yeah,
is there a world in which what does become more important? Like the niche stuff, right? Because the niche shows and venues can support niche audiences. Or, for example, like Black Promoters Collective, like they're doing a phenomenal job of like buying tours and
totally.
competing. And like, I'd like to like see them win.
Totally. Oh yeah, Black Promoters Collector is definitely a good one. I was just talking with them the other day. Um, that's a really interesting point. If I could say, like, what I heard from what you're saying is, hey, one interesting question is how can promoters at the top, become, how can there be, more independent promoters at the top? A different side of that question is, like, well, how do we like fill the clubs more? Like how can the club level and the 5,000 capacity and below just be more kind of abundant? And what do you think about that? Like how healthy is that side of the scene, and what on like a national level can we do to like make that more and more of the sought after experience as opposed to like everyone pouring into the stadium for Taylor Swift?
I mean, I think that a lot of the problem is that we're still sort of looking at it from one angle. So, like, to me, a little bit of the solve has to be to think about how to do shows and events differently. Like, okay, you have a touring act that's going to sell 1,000 tickets, book that. But do you also have, I don't know what the thing is, right? Do you have a niche community that needs a place to showcase new talent? And maybe they can only do donations at the door. Like, is there like another way to like look at the finances of our industry? Because we don't have any support from the government, right? Whereas like in Canada, in Europe, they get government support when as arts presenters. We don't get anything. So that means we need to be completely different about how we're thinking about the finances of every show and every event. So I think that that's a really important piece to create diversity and to create more programming, is just coming up with a completely different way to engage in the finances of each show and into like the scope of each show. And then also like thinking, putting into perspective, like, how do you do it totally differently? Like, it's so great. There's so many daytime events right now that are happening. Okay, well, if you just made a bunch of money on a daytime dry sober party, can you now put on a free show at night because you have the space and you just made money? I think there also needs to be like just more push to be creative and to open doors all the time. Like, and I think that's a thing that we don't do because we're just like tired and scared and nervous, and we're kind of
Yeah.
worn out. Like, if we get the big daytime show and we're like, this is so cool that we have a big rave and we're paying our bills with it, we're not like, oh, what's my give? What's my connection to the community? So I think if we can create a little more space in our industry for that kind of thinking, I think it would, that's why we all got in it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
we love people. So how do we make sure that we're serving that? Like, how are we? Because the pieces, even in a for-profit venue, 5,000 cap or below, if you have more of a serving your community viewpoint, you're gonna make, and more of a mission statement like a nonprofit would, which is probably who you are anyway. You're a thoughtful person who loves music, who fell in love with a singer-songwriter or whatever, and that's why you open a
Mm-hmm.
venue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you can think more about serving whatever community is that you're in or all the communities that you're accessing, I think that we would all do better in creating better programming and diversifying. And that's what we need, is to fill more time slots. So that's my perspective of how to change the viewpoint.
I love that. Interesting. Well, we kind of just jumped into it, which was a ton of fun, but uh, perhaps we could have started off with what you do and how'd you get into all this madness. So why don't we go there? And I obviously know you mostly from MeanRed and the
Yeah.
shows that you put on over the years, but when did you get into all this mess? Like how do we all how do we start on this journey? Yeah.
Um, so I was a waitress in New York at bottle service clubs.
What year?
And that's how I met all the big promoters.
Oh, sorry.
And
What year are we in approximately?
2001, probably
Cool.
1999. I was like 18, 19.
Love
And
that.
at the time, so I was working for the Baldwin brothers. They had a club and guys like Mark Ronson and stuff were playing there. And then I started to work at Joe's Pub, and Bill Bragan was booking there, and Walter Durkatz, and Serge Becker was kind of my mentor there. And so I just like was managing and doing bottle service and then like begged them until they let me book shows, and begged and begged and begged. And Serge and Walter really were these kind of like OGs in New York, and they really understood that like making a bet on a non-traditional person at the time, like just, being female, maybe non-traditional, like was the way to get to better priming. Like, they lived that ethos. And they, and around a lot of the same time with like Ilhan Ersahin doing New Blue, and, just like folks, Larry Gold was at SOBs, my friend Erica Elliott was there. There was a good solid sense in New York downtown that like, if you support people who are non-traditional, communities that are non-traditional, like, this is what's important. This is what you should do, right? Um, it's so different now because the way music moves and money moves is so different now. But they were really great at that. So then I worked for Serge for a long time. I did Joe's Pub and 205 Club, and I opened a club called Volume for him. Um, and then finally in 2006, I guess, I opened MeanRed and started. And at the time I had just become like a mom, kind of like out of the blue, a little bit of like a not planned. And I was like, oh, fuck. Well, I better pay
Perfect
my
time to
bills.
start an
So
independent promoter when you're have a baby.
that was kind of it. So I was doing a lot of underground parties and shows, and we're doing rooftops and warehouses and stuff. And then I opened a venue called the Brooklyn Yard, which was on the Gowanus Canal. Um,
Beautiful.
and I think it was so mixed. I was in this little cocoon with Serge and with those guys, because they were kind of like my whatever, nightlife people who protected me. And then when I went on my own, I was really shocked at how mean the industry was, I think I was really like probably disappointed, if I'm honest, um, just to see like how there's a lot of scarcity thought and that a lot of people weren't going to let me into their venues. And what did I even know anyway about? Because no one was even really supporting me. So I kind of just had to like shimmy my way up. So I ended up doing a lot of shows at 88 Palace, this dim sum restaurant in Chinatown. Like that's where we did Kate Renata. That's where we had Sophie. Like I ended up doing a lot of underground stuff, 1896 Warehouse, and just like kind of living in the underground to overground,
Let,
and that's how I got in.
let me double click on something. When you said you were shocked at kind of the harshness of the industry, can you kind of summarize like what you mean? And I'm curious as to like why you leaned in and why that didn't discourage you.
Well, other people's issues are my issues only when they force them on me, right? I think at the time I really came from this viewpoint of like the personal is political, right? Like, so I believe in putting on shows. I believe in, I mean, this thing about serving your community is definitely like kind of the come from, and it sounds like a little trite or whatever, but it's really true. If I can figure out how to get a show on, whatever it is, right? Like we would do pig roasts at the yard. We would do harvest festivals. Like if you can get people in a room together for a reason, it's you just feel lucky and like, okay, well, I'm lucky to be part of it. I'm lucky that I can like create a space for people to come and enjoy music or
Absolutely.
enjoy culture. So you just kind of stick with it and just hope. And I think the harsh piece, I think I thought, shoot, I remember like the first show I put on a rooftop, like another promoter who was supposed to be a very like woke kind of promoter, like went down the line and told people that the show sucked and to go to his show. And like, and I just thought,
No
that's
way.
crazy.
Whoa.
That's insane that someone would have the energy to, you know what I mean, hate in that way. And then I think I saw it over time so many times. And now, if I'm very honest, it's just, look, it's a very imperfect industry. And I think as a female promoter, like you're just going to have to work harder and it's going to be more imperfect and you're going to have to just try. And the way I work is not, I mean, it's never as good. I never am operating at a level that I think is good enough. And I'm always trying and I'm always trying to like solve for the like, there's a lot of just lack of like fair game in the industry. And I'm always trying to solve for that, and figure it out. And then I'm always trying to like still fight. So I think the fight has kept me in. Like last week, I was talking to a security company because I have a queer event that I want to have an all female and non binary security team, right? So I go to the security company. I say, hey, look, I want a different security team. I want them all female, non binary, femme presenting. And the security team fights with me for 20 minutes because why do I think that women could keep security? And I said, but you hire female security guards. Do they not know how to provide security? Like the security company kept pushing back and pushing back and pushing back. And I
Whoa.
said, it was crazy to me, right? Like I'm
Oh.
talking to a company that hires women for a job that they're telling me they don't know how to do. So finally I said to the guy, I said, look, like who's winning the fight in your household? And he's like, my wife. And I was like, great. Thank you. Thank you. So, but I was so angry at the end of that day. And I thought, why don't I just spend 20 minutes convincing people that women can,
Yeah.
just so some of that stuff still like boggles my mind as a female in the business that I'm still having to like fight these weird fights that are just logic. But it's also so telling that as humans, we're just not there yet. We're just not figuring out how to like optimize and have faith and believe, you know what I mean? Like we're not there yet. So I think that's to me is a lot of like my battle is like, okay, let me just keep presenting new ideas and then keep getting people in a room. And if that's all I'm doing, and then I'm all right, I just keep going.
Yeah. Wow. I love that story, and it's super interesting. That's
But it makes sense, right?
did you end up getting the security hire for that event?
I gave them 3 weeks to find female security who knew how to make people secure.
Did you have the event yet? I can't.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
did. You did. How did it
It's
go?
an event that runs every Wednesday. And it's like this really well known party in New York.
And
So we'll see.
is it
If we have
working
like a
with
model
all?
figured out.
Yeah. Is it working with all women security?
I've done it in the past and it's great. It's the best because it's
Cool.
so chill, I
Yeah.
think But this speaks to the fact that because we're in a people business, it's about the difficult moments people have. People are drinking, they're partying, they're
Totally.
vulnerable. Like that also keeps our industry from really sometimes, having like super high industry standards because, imagine like, yes, we're putting on a show for how many people, but then we're also like running people like me who are promoters. I'm putting on the show, I'm selling tickets, and I'm trying to figure out and learn how to run an EMT group who's supposed to like help people. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of life and death in
Oh
our
yeah.
in our everyday, and I think that's just adds to the difficulty in us trying to like do better all the time.
Yeah, I feel like you gotta. I mean, being a promoter is particularly hard. I did it for 4 years before starting Prism, but just life in general. I feel like as I've gotten older, I feel like wisdom is about just sense of humor, just kind of laughing at the silliness of it
Yeah,
all.
totally, totally, just accepting, totally.
Someone once told me that if, oh God, what did they say? I'm blanking on it now. Yeah, life's just not funny if you don't have a sense of humor,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
You definitely have to be able to like just get through and be like, and all that's the end
Like,
of it
oh,
too.
this shit show just landed on my plate today. Like, okay, here we go. What else is
Or
gonna
like,
fall through the roof,
we're not like in the ER. We're not saving lives. We're putting on shows at the end of the day. So it's also like not like, you know what I
Wait, and
mean?
why aren't kids like storming into this space? But I think just to take a divergence, I think I can understand some apprehension. Oh yeah, and you were asking me about tech. If the
Yeah,
kids are kind of like curious about tech. I'm not necessarily like following. I don't know if I have the data to say it, but like I will say I'm optimistic for the future of this industry because what gets automated by AI, what gets pushed to our screens. You can't do that with live events. Like live events perhaps are like the one thing that are resistant to the screen. The more people are addicted to their screen and looking at their screens all day long, and then they get into like I think the more refreshing a real world beautiful experience will be as the era of like the digital like tries to consume more and
yeah.
more of our
I
life.
agree.
And
I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
I think
now
it's
we
a
just
really valid point.
yeah, now we just got to make it work and make it sustainable. I mean, how have you made it work and sustainable over the years? Because you're 20 years in or so, and doing more stuff and more interesting. So through all the chaos and the fights and the funny situations, like what keeps you
I
driving?
don't think on the real, I don't think I've found my stride yet. I think I'm still in the like figuring it out part. I know
I
that
love
sounds
that.
nuts, but I really believe in my heart that like
Yeah, I love that.
I just think a lot of now what I'm moving into is figuring out how to create a better business model for opening venues. Um
And you're
and
opening a
address
venue. Let's talk about that. Yeah. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you
the
off,
venue
but
I'm
go ahead.
working on in Detroit, my investment life has always been real estate, and that's kind of how I backed my company. And so I bought a really gorgeous building in Detroit that's historic. And I kind of was figuring out what to do with it for a while. And then finally just kind of put a model together that I think is really makes sense that I'm really working on now, which is about the venue piece itself being a nonprofit, the F&B and the real estate being for profit. So I can kind of like work in all different ways. And I think that then, and it's kind of what Joe's Pub was that model. And it was really great. And I know that was like my first venue I was really booking in, but I really think it was, the nonprofit piece or figuring out how to integrate, I think is just more honest. And I think often I want to book shows that don't make money. And I want to, so my, idea with that venue is to more have not me as a primary booker, but to have a bunch of curators in Detroit who are booking shows, but be able to say to them, hey, you don't have to worry about make money. Just pick the best artists in this genre that you love and develop them. We'll get bodies in. And that to me is like, yes, I have to do a lot of shows that make money. Cool. That's cool. But can I also figure out how to really develop artists and curators and other buyers? And I think that
So
that's especially in a market like Detroit, which kind of mainly has AEG and Live Nation. Um, and for me, living in Detroit, I think, I kind of always say like I live in Detroit and I work in New York, right? I think that living in Detroit, I've really just learned that like there's so many artists and culture purveyors that like want to do things different and want to interact in a different way. And that's a lot of, like what I came up with as an OC punk in Southern California is like we like are not going to ascribe to like mainstream business and capitalism and whatever else, right? We're going to do DIY shows and that's going to be what the energy is. So I think that's a lot of what I think about with this venue is like, how do I just support and meet people where people are at, This
So
artist doesn't want to get into the mainstream music business, but does want to put on shows. How do I support them? Or because really at
I
the end of
love
the day,
that.
the job is how do I just get the show on? How do I make sure everyone's getting paid? So I think that model is going to really work.
I love that. So to be clear, it is a nonprofit, like a 501c.
The venue is going to be a nonprofit and the building and the F&B is for profit.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's how it
Okay.
was at
So
Joe's Pub. Yeah.
wait, sorry, say that. What did you just say?
When I
That's
was
how
at
it
Joe's
was.
Pub, that was the model. As a public theater, we're the primary bookers. And then Walter Durkatz and I did a little bit of booking also. And then the F&B was Serge and Josh Burkhardt. Serge Becker and Josh Burkhardt.
On
So
these. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
it works because you want to have, and I'll say this, like one thing I really learned from that venue, and then for example, really got cemented in me from venues like Output. When there was a lot of us with strong personalities and opinions working towards a goal, we were able to be the most successful. When I've seen, and there's some venues that have more of like a singular entity is like booking it and making it. But my preferred model for sure is to have like a chorus of very intentioned music heads or culture and arts heads kind of putting it together. And I think in this model, it kind of allows for that a little more.
Interesting. Interesting. So are you going to have like nonprofit supporters, or is there like explain to me like the finances of it?
So
Yeah.
there's like, we'll work with grants for the build out,
Cool.
fundraisers. But like what I love in my life is like every show I do could be a fundraiser. Great. Do you know what I mean? Let me like, okay, cool. Um,
It's actually
so
a fairly common model in the private equity, or not private equity, the opposite of private equity, on like the performing arts center level. Like a
exactly.
lot of performing arts
Yeah.
centers are not, and they're these giant buildings and
Yeah.
extremely like legitimate businesses and community
Exactly.
staples. So
Well, and
bringing
Ken,
that to the
and
venue is curious, Yeah.
I think having like honesty about the mission, I think is really important. Like, for example, okay, I used to work at Drum, which is a really amazing Turkish-owned venue that's in the Lower East Side. Like, they essentially kind of have a mission, right? They're putting on a lot of world music. They're putting on they do like a gypsy festival. They're putting on Turkish music. There's like the most a lovely, beautiful group of people there who are doing shows. But essentially, they have a mission. And it's a dope mission, and it's in the East Village. So that's like there's a whole thing, right? That's happening, but it's a for-profit business. Well, I think we need to start kind of being a little more honest sometimes that there is a mission when it comes to like a space and a performing arts space and what we need to do to have integrity with artists, and communities. So I think kind of being a little more like National Sawdust, for example, is a nonprofit model. Like they're able, because they have this mission, they're able then to go back and raise capital to create, they have like a really amazing 360 sound system there. And like just the aesthetic and the vibe of the venue is really, really beautiful and perfect. And they're able to do that because of like being able to have let's say, here's my mission, and then to like fundraise to that mission instead of saying like, there's a difference when you're just putting on a for-profit venue. And venues are closing in New York, right? Brooklyn
Mhm.
Made. Why would, a venue like that was so well funded? Why is it closing? Paragon, great venue. Like there's just venues are closing because it's hard. So I want to beat that system and come up with a way to create cushions and support and, have it
It's an
be,
amazing, revolving door of venues that come and go over the years. I mean, in Austin, it's just absurd. I
yeah,
mean, the
right?
11 years
But
that
then
I've
you
been
have
here.
ones that have
Yeah.
stayed forever, right?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's you root for those that they continue forever. But I guess I'm never I'm sad, but never surprised, and perhaps sad that I'm never surprised when I hear those announcements of a venue closing, just because it is such a battle.
It is a battle, and I think it does make me sad because I know that each owner who opened that venue was like gave everything, their
Right.
blood, sweat, and tears to the night. Like they just really gave a crazy amount of their all to get that venue open.
Yep.
And I want to have a way to support them to help them figure it out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because it's probably just like a little tiny thing, which things like Prism help, right? Because like you can see data,
Thank
but
you.
like, can we, like, I've noticed in Michigan, there's more support from the state for performing arts there. And
Yeah,
why can't we get New York State to do that? Like New York State benefits quite a large amount from from our venues. So like
totally,
subtle
totally.
inconsistencies.
No, it is an interesting point too when you look at like the economic impact of these festivals or venues, and then then you're like, okay, if they're surviving on their own, like they're having disproportionate benefits to the city, and sometimes I wonder if economic impact surveys can even capture like what is Austin, Texas like with or without like a live music district? Like sure they can put a number and say, oh, $180 million a year because of this many people go and then they flood into the restaurants and then the waitresses have salaries and living wages
Yeah.
but it's kind again like I think what are these cities without like vibrant culture and having more public money like going into funding and keeping these things alive is I don't it seems reasonable to me, frankly. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's why in other countries, like when I have friends who are promoters in Montreal, and when you look at the music scene in Montreal, let's say, right? Like there's just more space to support more diverse artists, or the pressure is different because the pressure we have here is just to sell tickets, right? So Austin's a great example of like, would Austin look completely different if the state of Texas completely supported the venues and gave them space to book other kinds of artists? And I think, like Austin, I can think of a bunch of different communities that aren't served as much as they could be, in the venues. So, no, I think we'll see. I think we'll see where it all goes. I think there's enough of us now that are really fighting for the industry to kind of like hopefully be supported. So
yeah,
I'd love it if
yeah.
stuff shifted a little. And I mean, all you'd want.
It's a stubborn industry for in the right way. It's kind of funny because vendor. I went from being a promoter myself to selling to promoters, and I'm sure this won't surprise you, but amongst technology vendors, there's definitely a sentiment that this is a stubborn industry. There's like people hold on to their dollars and they're very stubborn. But it's like on one end, okay, if they weren't stubborn, they wouldn't survive. If they weren't very careful with their money, if they weren't very extremely like shrewd and watchful,
I
like
know, right? I mean, I think,
like you have to see both sides of that, and I'm actually reminding myself of that now. It's like, yeah, these people are stubborn. It's like, why are they running a venue after 20 years if it's not, and like what, and stubborn's kind of a pejor stubborn could be and probably is a pejorative word, but like they're passionate, is another kind of the other side of that. And without this passion, it's like, yeah, okay, you'll just go do corporate real estate and just,
yeah,
like
yeah,
do kind of the same thing, switch out the characters and make a lot more money. But no, they want to like those moments, as you said earlier in the pod, where you bring people together and it just makes it all feel good, is why they keep hanging on and say, you know what, like you only have one life, can't bring the money with you. Even
yeah,
if I don't make a lot of money, but I can like sustain myself, I could see myself doing this for the next 40 years and just, it's like one of the purest things I think in this capitalist society is a music venue. Truly, I'm getting a
yeah.
little sentimental here, but anyway, I believe in that. Yeah,
No, totally agreed. It's like a lovely, from a small business place, it's powerful, right? Because because you have so many different people you're touching all the time, for sure. Yeah. But I think on the other side of it, we're like, like insurance has become such a major problem. And,
totally. Yeah.
fighting. We're fighting because there isn't enough support in the US for small businesses, right? Like
Hmm. Hmm.
small businesses make America essentially, to me, right?
Yeah.
I think, but then we don't have a lot of support, and like it's a complicated system, capitalism, right? And insurance is a
It
great
is complicated, isn't it? Yeah.
really complicated. Yeah,
Yeah, there's no perfect system. Yeah, without getting into a debate about capitalism and
I know.
all that kind of stuff. It has its pros and cons, let's just say that
Wow.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think no matter what, if to take it back, and then probably I have to hop on another thing, so
Oh,
I should
no
probably.
problem. Yeah, yeah. This has
One
been
thing that
fun.
I do think is, the hope is that like if the transparency increases and the discussions increase, and so then in the industry we're all just talking about how to put on a better show, right? Like if that's the crux of the discussion, is like I think then it'll just move us all forward, because I think a lot of the discussion is how, like, it's about money, right? Like, who can pay more, right? And I think that that doesn't always really honor our customers, and it doesn't even always honor the artists. So I do think this piece about this constant, like, looking at ourselves and like, and just trying to like do better all the time, which is really hard and really uncomfortable. And we like, get called out all the time for doing things wrong and for making mistakes. But you look at Avant Gardner, like, wasn't able to open last week, but
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
like,
Yeah.
I know, but we're all rooting for them because they took a big bite and they're dope and like they're doing a thing that I'm
Thank you
not.
for saying that. Yeah.
So you want all of it. I want all of us just to like stay holding on.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like the people in the industry that get it are rooting for it, and then they're just battling an army of online trolls,
Oh,
that are, yeah.
really hard. It's really, really hard, right? Yeah. Because I think people think, like, when I think about a venue, like the ones I mentioned that closed or ones that are having struggles, I just think of like, there's not that many people working there, like at the top to figure it out. There's like 2 to 5 very key people who've sunk their entire heart and world into that venue. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just literally just talking about this with one of my employees who lives in New York. It's like, they very publicly kind of owned up to some mistakes that they made with the festival and whatnot.
yeah,
And tough thing about like publicly owning up to mistakes is like doesn't mean you're going to be perfect from then on out, and then the next chance someone gets, see, you haven't changed or whatever, and
I
it's like,
know.
come
I
on,
know.
y'all,
And
why are we tearing each other down? Like.
oh, no, I know. I've been thinking a lot about that too, is like, well, how do you beat that? Like, so many people have been canceled and so many people have been called out, and okay, but like that was a moment in time, or like you know, what's the
What's the next thing? Yeah,
what's the way to solve? What's the way to solve? Is like, okay, well, the transparency of communication about who we are and what we're trying and what we're doing as venues, you know what I mean, doesn't necessarily get us there. And we don't have a lot of money, but how do we like what is you know, I don't know what the fix is. Yeah.
yeah. Well, let's end with this. What's the hope for the future for this industry?
Oh my gosh, just more promoters, more shows, more venues, more artists thinking about independent promoters and venues.
I love
More
that.
thoughtfulness about how to work with independent promoters and venues, I think, on all sides. And really, um, I think that all of us who are on the side of buying and booking shows and creating events can like need to just be more like that we have to be more generous with others to bring them into the fold and to figure out how to make it healthier and how to make it better and how to make it a more viable lifestyle, for example.
I love that. Yeah. Collaboration for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, thanks for collaboration over all the years. Wishing you the best of luck with this new venue. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, appreciate it. Best of luck with all the shows that you have coming up.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, thank you for your positive message. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Very interesting.
Well, try and get all of your members to join Insights for me. Thanks.
Yes, thank
Because
you.
I'm ready. Ready to compete with all of them.
Yes, let's do it. All right. Well, have a great day, Jen. Appreciate you.
Take care. Bye.